What if the biggest reason children avoid responsibility is not laziness, not defiance, but a hidden 5-second battle inside the brain? Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it may change how you guide a child forever. I remember the exact moment something inside me shifted. It was a quiet evening, nothing unusual, yet the same scene kept repeating. I asked for a simple thing, just a small responsibility, and it was as if my words dissolved in the air. Minutes passed, then reminders, then tension. And beneath that, a question I couldn't ignore anymore. Why does responsibility seem so fragile, so temporary, even when we try so hard to teach it? For a long time, I believed the answer was effort. More structure, more reminders, more consequences, more praise. Like many parents, I thought responsibility was something you built from the outside in. But what I saw again and again was compliance without ownership, action without intention, and eventually resistance. Then something unsettled me. I began noticing how naturally some children carried responsibility, not forced, not negotiated, simply lived. This led me down a path of quiet curiosity toward an idea so small it almost sounded absurd. A 5-second window between being asked and beginning to act. 5 seconds. That was all. Not a technique, not a discipline method. A moment inside the brain where something invisible decides whether action will flow or resistance will take hold. I didn't know it yet, but that tiny window was about to change how I understood responsibility forever. What drew me deeper was the unsettling thought that those 5 seconds were not about behavior at all, but about the brain itself. As I kept exploring, I began to see responsibility through a completely different lens. When a child hears an instruction, there is a brief neurological opening, a moment where intention is still light, before emotion has time to weigh it down. In that window, the brain is ready to move. But if action does not begin quickly, something subtle shifts. The emotional center begins to interpret the task as effort, as interruption, sometimes even as pressure. What was simple becomes heavy, and resistance quietly takes shape. I started recognizing this pattern everywhere. The longer the delay, the stronger the resistance. Not because the task changed, but because the brain did. And when action began quickly, the opposite occurred. Thought flowed into movement before hesitation could form. Over time, this strengthened something deeper than obedience. It strengthened the connection between deciding and doing. This realization changed how I interpreted so-called laziness. Perhaps many children are not avoiding responsibility at all. Perhaps they are waiting, unknowingly, for the brain to build resistance. And then another question surfaced within me. If hesitation can be learned, can initiative be trained? That question stayed with me until curiosity quietly turned into action. I decided to try, not perfectly, not as an expert, but as someone observing something fragile in real time. I began with one small, ordinary task, the kind that usually dissolves into reminders. The first change was how I spoke. Instead of distant or delayed language, I gave a clear, immediate direction, simple, specific, grounded in the present moment. Not later, not when you're ready, but now. Then I invited acknowledgement. Not a distracted response from across the room, but a brief pause, eye contact, a quiet, "I heard you." At first it felt almost symbolic, yet I could sense a tension sharpening, like a mind shifting from drifting to focusing. Next came the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Calm, steady, almost neutral. Not pressure, not urgency, just a gentle boundary between thinking and moving. And then, the most important part, the start. Not completion, not perfection. Only the first movement. A hand reaching, a body turning, a task beginning to exist in action rather than intention. The early days were uneven. Hesitation surfaced, emotions flickered. Old patterns did not disappear simply because I wished them to. But something subtle began to emerge. The space between hearing and doing grew shorter, quieter, less conflicted. I realized I was not trying to control behavior. I was witnessing the slow formation of a pathway, one small action at a time. Yet every new pathway is tested before it becomes trusted. There were moments when nothing happened at all. The countdown would reach 1, and stillness remained. Other times, emotion rose suddenly, tears, frustration, the quiet protest of losing control over timing. In those moments, I had to confront something in myself too, the urge to repeat, to push harder, to abandon the process. But slowly, I began to see resistance differently. Not as defiance, but as the mind holding on to what it already knows. When movement did not begin, I gently guided the first step, calm, steady, without force. When emotions surfaced, I acknowledged them without dissolving the boundary. I see this as hard, and we're still beginning. Something shifted in those quiet interactions. The resistance did not vanish, but it softened. The pauses shortened. The emotional waves lost their intensity. Then one ordinary day, something unexpected happened. Before any reminder, before any countdown, the action began on its own. Small, simple, almost invisible, yet unmistakable. In that moment, I realized responsibility had started to move from outside pressure toward inner choice. Not commanded, not enforced, but forming quietly, like a habit the mind was beginning to trust. That quiet moment stayed with me, and it changed how I began to understand responsibility itself. I no longer saw it as obedience or even as discipline. Responsibility, I realized, is the ability to move from intention into action without waiting for pressure, reminders, or rewards. It is a form of inner trust, a growing confidence that one can act even when no one is watching. And when a child repeatedly steps into action within that brief window, something deeper reshapes itself. The hesitation weakens. The movement becomes lighter. Initiative begins to surface in places you never directly taught. This process is not immediate, and it is rarely perfect. The early days may feel uncertain, uneven, even discouraging. But with time, small changes accumulate. A quicker response here, a self-started task there. Then, gradually, a different pattern emerges, one where responsibility is no longer pushed from the outside, but rising from within. If you feel curious, try one simple moment today. Offer a clear instruction, invite awareness, allow the countdown, and watch for the first movement. And as you do, consider this with me. What if responsibility is not something we impose, but something we quietly help awaken? Looking back, what began as a small experiment slowly revealed a deeper truth. Responsibility does not grow through pressure, repetition, or control. It grows when a person learns to trust the space between knowing and acting. In that brief moment, choice is formed, and with repeated action, that choice becomes character. What seems like a simple 5-second shift is, in reality, a quiet training of the mind to move forward instead of hesitating. Over time, this transforms not only behavior, but confidence, independence, and self-direction. The deeper lesson is this: real responsibility cannot be forced from the outside. It must be awakened from within through consistent, calm guidance. In daily life, this means focusing less on pushing outcomes and more on helping small actions begin. Whether with children or even with ourselves, start with one clear step, act before hesitation grows, and allow discipline to emerge naturally through repetition. Now, I would genuinely love to hear your perspective. What is one simple task you feel resistance toward, either for your child or even for yourself? Please share your thought in the comments so we can learn from each other. And if this reflection resonated with you, consider subscribing to support the channel and encourage more meaningful explorations ahead.